How you doing? So this is a bonus. It's an essay feedback session. What we're looking at today is the question you did, the essay question, and looking at some of the better work that was done there and maybe how you could develop it. Now, this question is very, very relevant at this moment in time in terms of government responsibility for the policy in regards to the virus. If you look at this picture, you can see all the complexity that exists within the government at this moment in time. We have the Prime Minister responsible for the full government strategy. So every target that's missed, every question that's been asked about how the strategy is taking place, how much responsibility will he be taking? Then we have the Minister for Health, who, when asked questions the other day in Parliament, was a little bit edgy on that particular thing, questioning the tone of the questions that were being asked of him. But that's his role as Minister, to take ministerial responsibility for the decisions that have taken place. But then we have the anomalies. We have Cummings, who obviously is the advisor to Boris Johnson. How much influence is he having over the strategy that's taking place at this moment in time? And how much is he being held accountable? And then, of course, the science, the support that's being given to the government. How much will they be held responsible for the decisions that were being made? All of which look into the issue of how much the convention of individual ministerial responsibility remains relevant. So let's see how you did. If we take the introduction, what we've said in the past is we like a definition, some sort of modern context, and then can you bring in the debate? You can see here that we've had issues to do with resignations this week in regards to Professor Lockdown, as he's been known, one of the special advisors to the Prime Minister over the strategy. And then whether or not that actually means that the government themselves should take responsibility for some of the actions of the people who are supporting them. Anyway, this was excellent. Not only do we have definition, we have context. The only thing I would say is, in this setting up the debate and doing signposting it, a little bit of refinement. For example, instead of this start, what I would argue is you should go for this kind of wording. To evaluate its ongoing relevance is important to consider, and that just allows you to bring in the different areas in which the evaluation can take place. Okay, let's get into the meat of the essay. Now, what we're looking for when we look at this point is we're looking for a development of that point and then a counter. So the point is the convention remains a constitutional expectation. Fine, that's important. So what we're trying to argue in assertion here is that we would expect it to continue. Well, if you read this, you can see that this is well written. Not only does it talk about Dixon's formal constitutional model and how that supports the fact that it's an expectation, but it illustrates well using Morris and then Carrington as points to show that actually the convention continues to have some relevance. Then we can see the counterpoint to bring balance. The use of examples here, and see how nicely it's been put together to allow the convention to be discussed. Finishing at the end here with some sort of evaluation which talks about the convention leading to increasing pressure on the public figure. And even if it's not there, it's still an expectation. Here's another role where we look at the counterpoint to bring balance to the argument. Again, nicely written, but in a different way, using a different example to show the point that in fact the convention can be ignored. I think if we're thinking about the evaluation of this particular section and the relevance of the convention, you'd have to say the convention is too vague. It leaves it really down to the Minister, the Prime Minister to interpret, and therefore its relevance is dependent on the personalities and the context of the time, rather than being a consistent feature. Okay, second point we were discussing was the importance of the convention because it's needed there to protect the civil service anonymity. That was really well done in terms of people explaining how the anonymity underpins the permanence and neutrality of the civil service. I think the area to work on was probably the counterpoint, when you're looking at how different ministers over time have undermined the anonymity of civil servants. Here's a good one where it explains how Duncan Smith did this, okay, and then Michael Howard, showing that anonymity has become gradually less relevant, using the idea that there's a trend there which shows that ministers are more willing to hide behind their civil servants. If you looked at Francis Moore's criticisms of the civil service, this would support that too. So when we look at it here, you can see there's clear tensions that exist in the government between those who make the policy and those who implement the policy. and whether or not ministers feel they should take responsibility for all of that when mistakes occur. It probably means that the convention itself is too vague once again to really be relevant in every circumstance. Good. Third point was to show how government decision making has become more complex. Perhaps that special advisors have made it more important that the convention is supported, because the minister brings special advisors into the government, and therefore they should be responsible for the advice they're getting. So we're looking at Dominic Cummings when he was with Gove at Education, but of course now, what role is he playing with the Prime Minister? And how it's this, and this is really nicely done here in this piece of work, how that analysis comes in and sets up the illustration that comes next. If we're looking at evaluation now, the second half of the essay, or this particular section, was about talking about the complexity. It isn't just special advisors, it's the Prime Minister's influence, it's the decisions of other departments, it's still the relevance of the civil service and their network. To therefore pin responsibility on one person through individual ministerial responsibility probably is a little bit simplistic and doesn't really reflect the nature of modern government. That's what you're looking for. So if you're working on your evaluations, always trying to think broadly about what your argument is showing you. Let's take us to conclusion. And here are two different models. This one's good. You have your judgment, you have acknowledgement of the complexity, and it's pretty concise. If anything, the only thing I would say is it needs a little bit more than support of the judgment. However, this one takes a different angle. The first one was talking about it's still significant. Here it's saying it's not fit for purpose. Why? And this is a lovely bit of supporting going on here, even taking to the point where you're saying it needs to be updated. That in fact it's out of it. It's not fit for purpose. It's too vague. It doesn't suit modern government. So when you're thinking about your conclusions, I was seeing nicely the three sections I was hoping for, but I was thinking that maybe this area was the one that was commonly the area of development, how you support your judgment using the previous arguments in your essay. Overall, I was really pleased. Considering the conditions you're working in, I was really happy with them. Look back at the comments, okay, and if you need any more feedback, email me. Cheers.